Jaguar. What comes to mind when you hear that name? Models like the E-Type, XJ, or F-Type. Historic wins at Le Mans. Old white dentists driving around at 15 miles an hour. Saying it like Jeremy Clarkson. And if you have no idea what you just clicked on, probably a giant cat. Whatever it is, ever since 1935, when the first car with the word Jaguar on it came out, they have been known for many things. Technical innovation, racing success, luxurious interiors, and most of all, being quintessentially British. They have an incredibly long and storied history of creating some of the most iconic cars in the world. So, it came as an earth-shattering surprise when on November 19th of 2024, the company announced that they would be rebranding completely. This momentous shift was presented to the public by first removing all of their previous posts from social media. They then released a single 30-second video that revealed the new logo and, in a sense, the new direction, but no new cars. How did people react? Well, the best way to sum it up is that they hated it. All car spaces became a war zone with hot takes and emergency podcasts saturating the air. It seemed to all that Jaguar had taken leave of their senses, but had they? On the surface, it seemed like an act of lunacy, but if we dig further, we find that maybe we should have all seen this rebrand coming. I think the best place to start is with the video that kicked all of this off. Before everyone spontaneously combusts in the comment section, let's talk about what the video actually showed us. The important beats were a new focus on bold colors and modernity. The marketing terms about individuality and uniqueness were pretty generic but speak to the new direction. And of course, the new modern-looking logo itself. These were all giant departures from all previous Jaguar marketing and really were as far as you could get from what they used to do. And that is probably the most important part of the video, that Jaguar wanted nothing to do with their old self, and were wiping the slate clean, completely, and starting fresh. As to why they decided to do that, we will get into later. Now let's see what people thought about it. I think there's only really two camps, the ones that hated it to such a degree they started glowing, and those who only disliked it. I don't think a single person genuinely enjoyed it. Of course, since I've just said that, I'm sure a number of them will appear in my comments. The reason for people's hatred were varied. The most common were things like the fact no new cars were shown, a feeling that Jaguar was fine and didn't need a rebrand, Jaguar was abandoning their customers, a hatred of the new logo, and of course a bunch of people throwing the word woke around so much you'd think Jaguar found a way to make a car transition. I do think most of these have some merit, but the people going on about go woke, go broke didn't just lose the plot, they never had it. Personally, I am in the dislike camp. I think the idea behind the video wasn't that bad, but the execution really let it down. The biggest mistake was not including the Type 00 concept car, which will be discussed more later. Having some sort of new car, even a concept, would have probably lessened the vitriol and would have provided something concrete that people could wrap their heads around better. As for the idea behind the video, if you were a car maker that had decades of baggage, your best models long past, and non-existent sales numbers, and you told an ad agency you want as much air between yourself and your history as possible, I can see how this video gets made. And to be clear, that is Jaguar's plan. They deliberately stopped making cars to put some distance in between the old and new. They have also said they do not expect to keep more than 15% of their old customer base. Not that there were many of those left. And while the content of all the reactions are important, I think the sheer amount of comments, tweets, videos, podcasts, articles, etc. are probably the biggest thing to come out of the video release. It seemed that the whole world took notice of the rebrand, and for the first time in over a decade, people were talking about Jaguar and curious about their future. Now, I do not think that all press is good press, nor do I think their intent was to get the reaction they got, but outside of enthusiasts, people don't think about Jaguar. And even in enthusiast circles, the number of people interested in them is going down as more and more time passes. Most of my friends don't care about cars at all, and certainly have never asked me about Jag before, but a number of them wanted to talk about the rebrand. And that single fact that it took this big of an event for the general public to even notice Jaguar still existed speaks volumes as to why the rebrand was always coming. Now, let's go through their long and checkered history to explore how they got to this position. As mentioned earlier, Jaguar's name first appeared on cars in 1935, though at this time they were under the purview of the unfortunately named SS cars. SS then, for some reason, decided in 1945 to rename themselves to Jaguar cars. Success soon followed with models like the XK120, Mark II, and E-Type in the 50s and 60s. The E-Type especially set the world on fire. Enzo Ferrari is rumored to have called it the most beautiful car in the world. Featuring a twin-cam engine, disc brakes all around, and fully independent suspension, it was arguably the most advanced sports car in the world. It got to 60 in under 7 seconds and would hit 150. And best of all, a price a third of what a Ferrari 250 would cost you. Every rich and famous person wanted to own one, and they sold like crazy. And while Jaguar was the height of cool on the road, they had cemented a motorsport legacy that many marques would be envious of, by winning Le Mans 5 times with legendary cars like the C and D type. And if sports cars weren't your speed, you could get a wood and leather-filled sedan that shared many of the same components as the E-Type. Yes, Jaguar was one of the first companies to make a sports sedan. These 2 decades represent the high watermark for the company, a time when they built some of the best cars in the world and competed with legends like Ferrari and Aston Martin. So, how did it all go wrong? One of the first dominoes was their merger into BMC, which then, in 1968, after another merger, became the infamous British Leyland. For those unaware of that mess, it was sort of the Stellantis of its day, except worse. Tons of different brands thrown together under one dysfunctional roof. Mismanagement, labor issues, financial problems, and a general that'll do attitude generated such bad products that less than 10 years later, in 1975, they were partially nationalized. It is therefore unsurprising that it was during this time that Jaguar gained a reputation for reliability and build quality issues. That isn't to say they didn't engineer good cars like the fresh XJS or the very innovative XJ6, but when they are built to incredibly low standards, it starts not to matter. A lack of R&D funds also contributed to both models running for over 15 years, surviving just on refreshes. The XJS in particular saw BMW go from making 2002s to E36s. Despite all of this, Jaguar was still one of the most valuable components of British Leyland, and so in 1984 they were spun off on their own. This independence lasted until '89, when Ford, eyeing the lucrative luxury car market, swooped in and bought Jaguar for $2.38 billion. Keep that number in mind for later. However, before we get to Ford, I want to quickly note Jaguar's placement in the automotive hierarchy until this point. They were a premium brand in the old sense of the word, and their products occupied the top end of the market. Below Bentley and Rolls, but really above the Germans in terms of luxury. What set them apart was interiors that were very close to Rolls-Royce, good handling, a handmade feeling, and an old worldness to them. They were cars used by the English royal family. They had issues, as we've seen, but they had a niche. I'm sure you can guess what the Detroit pencil pushers managed to do to that reputation. The Ford executives were shocked out of their perfectly shined shoes once they found out what all that money actually got them. A brand with crippling reliability and build quality issues, a model range of just 2 outdated cars, no money, and factories from the Stone Age. All those years of neglect under British Leyland had left Jaguar in a very bad way. Ford therefore spent much of the early 90s throwing money into the pit, trying to pull Jaguar vaguely into the same decade as everyone else on Earth. While this did improve things, Jag was still not making any profit. The new XJ and XK8 were better than their previous iterations in many areas, but Ford spent a fortune getting them into production, and their sales numbers were not amazing. Even Jaguar's return to performance cars didn't help much. They did win Le Mans twice, but prototype victories didn't help road car sales, and the XJ220 supercar was a commercial disaster, with only 275 built after getting 1,500 initial deposits. Enter Ford's big solution, the S and X-Type. This was the Americans' effort to push Jaguar to compete directly with the Germans right where they lived and finally sell some cars. The S-Type was to compete with the 5 Series and E-Class, and the X-Type with the 3 Series and C-Class respectively. Unfortunately, this didn't really go to plan. Jaguar did, to their credit, sell both cars in quantities previously never before seen by the brand, but they never once seriously challenged the Germans. Both cars had extremely traditional styling that made them seem old-fashioned very quickly and turned off younger buyers. They also shared platforms and engines with other Ford products, which upset some traditional Jaguar buyers who were not used to this approach, and created engineering limitations that hindered their ability to compete with the Germans. The lingering reliability concerns certainly didn't help, and the interiors for the first time were seriously downgraded. They were not awful by any means and got pretty good reviews, but never even got close to their sales targets. The target for the X-Type was $100,000 a year, and yet they only ever hit half of that. And then, in 2005, just 5 years after the launch, only about 10,000 were sold in the critical US market. That same year, BMW sold well over 100,000 3 Series. Mercedes sold over 60,000 C-Classes and Audi about 50,000 A4s. Another side effect of these cars is that Jaguar's brand placement got pulled from their old and relatively uncontested position into the meat grinder that was competing with the Germans. And trying to climb up the ladder is a lot harder than going down. Jaguar did eventually institute a new and much improved design language starting in 2007 with the new XF, but unfortunately their time at Ford had run out. The Detroit giant was hemorrhaging money and decided to cut their losses. They ended up selling Jaguar and Land Rover together to Tata for $2.3 billion. Considering Ford had paid a combined $5.2 billion for both, it was a huge loss, and despite all of their efforts, Jaguar never once made a profit under ownership of the Americans. Life under Tata saw Jaguar continue its mission to compete with the Germans. An all-new design language fixed one of Ford's mistakes, ushering in an era of modern and handsome cars, like the new XK, XF, and XJ. Sales started to improve, and Jaguar expanded its lineup with cars like the XE, a new sporting car in the F-Type, and ventured into the land of SUVs with models like the E-Pace, F-Pace, and I-Pace. The F-Pace, especially, was a big success, instantly becoming Jaguar's biggest selling model. And they managed to beat almost everyone else to market with the I-Pace, as one of the first electric SUVs to come out of a legacy manufacturer. All of this culminated in 2018 when Jaguar had their best ever year, up until that point, selling 180,000 cars across a model range of 7. Things were looking good for Jag. They had pretty cars that drove well and with characterful engines. What's that? In the same year, Land Rover sold nearly 400,000 cars? Audi sold 1.8 million? I don't even want to know what Mercedes did. How many does Jaguar need to be profitable again? 600,000? Unfortunately for all of their successes, Jaguar was still essentially wandering in no man's land. They didn't sell enough to make profit by volume, but also couldn't just raise prices because these were mass market cars. Reliability had never really been solved, and the interiors at this time were not good. Unable to truly compete with their rivals, and without the sweet profit margins of their sister brand Land Rover, the cars continued to age and age, like what had happened multiple times before, and Jaguar didn't have the money to keep up. They never managed to be good enough long enough to get out of this cycle. By 2023, sales had dropped to below 63,000, which was less than the Land Rover Defender managed on its own that year. As the spiral continued, the final nail in the coffin came when, in July of 2024, Jaguar announced that they would cease production of their current models and switch to new electric ones. There would be 3, the first of which going on sale in mid-2026, which means that Jaguar's plan is to just not make cars for 2 years. Just think about how insane that is. A company whose sole purpose is to build and sell cars deciding business was so bad that it made more sense to just stop. If there's one thing that showcases more than anything else how rancid things got towards the end, it's that decision. Then, a few months after Jaguar dropped that bombshell, they released the rebrand. After the release of the initial video, the next big announcement came when on December 2nd, Jaguar unveiled the Type 00 concept car I had mentioned earlier. Long, extremely low, and exclusively in bright and bold colors, if nothing else, it fit the copy nothing statement. A huge hood stretches towards an extremely raked roof over enormous 23-inch wheels that show off one of Jaguar's new logos. My favorite detail is a brass rectangle in front of the doors that has the new Leaper logo laser etched onto it. The rectangle then extends outwards to reveal cameras used instead of rear view mirrors. It's almost brutalist in nature and is, like everything else, a massive change from the old ways. And while this is essentially just a design concept, Jag say it's very close to what the real cars will look like. Whether this is true is speculation, but spy shots show that the design language is similar. And while the concept car itself is a great indicator of Jaguar's plans, their decision to unveil it at Miami Art Week is just as telling. They surrounded it with actors, influencers, artists, all types of people that would have never been caught dead driving a Jag before. This again shows the intent of shedding their old image and going for something new. And just like the video, people are talking about it and creating buzz for what comes next. The next big step will be the release of the first of the new models in mid-2026. That is, of course, the first real test of this rebrand, as everything up until now is more or less theoretical. But from everything shown so far, it will be big, bold, and looking towards the future. And so, in the end, whether or not this rebrand will succeed is still up in the air. But what is not up for debate is that if Jag didn't do a big swing like this, they would have been shut down. I can't imagine Tata would want to spend the money required to bring Jag back without a radical change, as their history has shown that time and time again they are unable to be successful long-term doing what they've been doing. So why not try something completely new? Why not use what value is left in the brand and go radical? I don't love or even particularly like this rebrand, but I do understand it. It's the swing you do when you know there isn't another one coming. And at least they are making it a big one. Better to go like that than the way Lancia did. If you have a different opinion, feel free to write about it in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and if you want to see more, please subscribe. Thank you.